Hey friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to a preview of this beautiful game right here. This is Bouquet. It is published by Rough Draft Games, who is sponsoring today's video, and it is designed by Thomas Youngerberg as well as Garrett Lively. And I really love when I get to share with you guys games that really go along with the theme of the Board Game Garden. Obviously, when I saw Bouquet, I was like, yes, would love to share it. But yeah, Bouquet is a bluffing and area control game all about the petals and the bees and the blossoms and creating this flower bouquet or flower arrangement by the end of the game. Players are going to be placing down petals or plucking petals of opponents as well as drawing from their draw pile. We'll get into all of that in this video, but if you guys want to hear more about Bouquet, how it plays, if it's something that you would be interested in, then just keep on watching. Give this video a big thumbs up. Also hit the subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. I will have the link to the Kickstarter campaign down below for Bouquet if you guys want to go and check that out. But without further ado, let's get into this preview of Bouquet, shall we? All right, so getting into a little bit of an aim of the game, and then I will show you guys all of the components, which this is a pretty small game, so there's not a ton of components. But basically, I've given you a little overview in the intro, but each player is going to be playing as a different petal color, and you are going to be placing or plucking other players' petals. You're going to be placing your own petals or picking up from the draw pile to gain more petals into your hand of 5. And each of the different things that you have on your petal, so there's going to be some petals that have bees, some petals that are withered, some petals that have dewdrops, different things like that. You are going to be placing them either face up or face down. If you place them face down, then you get to ignore their like placement restrictions. For example, the bee petals, they have to be placed in between two other petals. So in order for me to actually place that petal face up with the bee showing, I do have to go by those rules and place that petal in between two other petals. But if I cannot do that, I can actually place this bee petal face down and I can ignore that restriction. But then if you do place that face down, then someone could potentially pluck that petal. Bee petals, if they're placed face up and you can see the bee, then you cannot actually pluck that petal. It's there forever because obviously if you pluck a petal that has a bee, you will most likely get stung. So you will not be able to pluck those. I'll get into all of the like placement and different things like that. But the game is going to be played over various rounds of players either placing, plucking, or drawing. And then once you have a full flower arrangement in different player counts, it does have a different end game, but for a full 5-player count, once all of the petals have been placed, you're going to look at the discard pile, and then the player with the most color in the discard pile does get to choose where to place this vase. And that's going to be important because any petals that are actually touching the vase do get some extra points. But that will then complete your full flower arrangement, and then players are going to count up victory points based off of the petals that they have out in the flower arrangement. So that's a little bit of an overview of the game. You can place things face down to bluff a little bit, make other players think you're placing something when you're actually placing something else, or you can place them face up, different things like that. We'll get into all of the rules. But yeah, that is a little overview of how the game plays. And then we're gonna get into the components. So you do have the little vase here. You have the 3 buds here. You have a full bud in the center, and then you have like the half buds on the outside. You do start the game with just the 1 bud in the center, and then eventually you will add the 2 side buds at some point during the game once you have a certain amount of petals in the center. Each player will then get their little pile of their petals. You will shuffle those up, and the pile is kind of constructed of 4 different types of petals. So you have your basic petals that have nothing, so they don't have anything on the one side. You have the petals that have the dewdrops, you have the petals that have the bees, and then you have the withered petals. So those are the 4 different types of petals, and each player will have their deck of petal cards. You're going to shuffle those up, and then you're going to pick up 5 into your hand. There is also a single white petal. This is simply if you place one of the side buds and the other side needs another petal to be placed at that moment, you will place this blocking petal instead of a player's petal. And then this pile here is just the discard pile. As you play the game, you will be plucking other players' petals, and those are going to be going into a discard pile. But yes, that is everything for the components. There's obviously a rule book and the box here. But yes, that is the components as well as the aim of the game. But let's get into exactly how you're going to play Bouquet. All right, so in Bouquet, like I mentioned, you are going to start with this middle bud in the center. There are going to be no petals on it at all. We kind of have a game set up here pretty close to the end just so I can show you guys a few examples. But like I mentioned, each player is going to choose a player color. They're going to get all the petals in their player color. They're going to shuffle up those petals and pick up 5 into their starting hand. And then starting with the start player, which I do believe in the rule book, it says it's the player to last sniff the flower, I believe, which is very cute. But that player will start by placing out one of their petals. And you can choose when doing this, you can either choose to place the petal face down, or you can choose to place the petal face up, which if you place the petal face down, you can actually ignore the restrictions, the placement restrictions, because there's going to be some placement restrictions, which I will get into in a second. But if you do place a petal face down, you get to ignore restrictions and place that petal wherever you want. But the ability of that petal is going to not happen. So when you place a petal face up, some of the petals are going to allow you to do some sort of ability based off of the icon on the petals. There are 2 other things that you can decide to do on your turn. Instead of taking the place action, you can decide to pluck one of your opponent's petals. Sometimes when plucking a petal, something is going to happen, so you would do that as well. Or you can decide to draw up to 3 petals into your hand, respecting the hand limit, which is 5 petals. But let's quickly get into exactly what's going to happen when you place a petal. All right, so the first thing you can decide to do on your turn is place a petal, which, like I mentioned, when you were doing this, you were going to decide either to place a petal face down, or you can decide to place a petal face up. So when you decide to place a petal face down, that means that you do get to ignore the restrictions of the petals, which the only restrictions of a petal, if it's just a normal petal with nothing, that's just going to have no restrictions. You can just place that face up wherever you want. There's also the bee petals. So the bee petals are needing to be placed in between 2 petals. So in this situation, this player would not be able to place this bee petal right here because there's not another petal. But if there was another petal, let me just say there was a petal here, this player with the bee would actually be able to place this bee petal face up in between those 2 petals. Next up, if a player had a petal with some dewdrops, this is going to have to be placed, if it is placed face up, it has to be placed directly across from another petal. So this would be a valid placement here because there is a petal here and it would be directly across from that petal. And lastly, for placing one petal face up, there is the withered petals. So it's this like little brown petal here. If a player has a withered petal and they place it face up. There are no placement restrictions, but this actually allows the player to draw up to their hand limits. So this would be a great petal to play when you are getting low on petals. So that's everything for placing a petal face up. Like I said, some of them have restrictions, some of them do not, but you can also decide to place a petal face down, and this completely ignores the restrictions of some of those petals, and you can place a petal wherever you want when it is face down. And this is really where a lot of the bluffing comes into play, because you might be placing some of these petals down in certain places to make players think that you're placing a certain thing when you're actually placing something else. And when a player decides to pluck a face down petal, something specific is going to happen. So let's get into all of those things. So getting into the plucking actions, this is when you are going to decide to pluck another player's petal from the flower. The first thing that you must do is, with your hand of 5 petals, you will have to discard one of those petals into the discard pile in order to take this action. So you will discard, and then you will decide what petal you want to pluck. You can pluck both a face-up petal as well as a face-down petal. The only petal that you cannot pluck when it is face-up is the bee. So I think I've mentioned this already, but it's pretty thematic, where obviously if you see a bee on a petal, you're not going to pluck that petal because you will most likely get stung. So any petals that have a bee face up, they are stuck there and cannot be plucked, but any other petal can be plucked, and most of them will do something. So I've already mentioned the bees, but the next kind of type of petal we're going to go over is the dewdrops. So if you decide to actually pluck a petal that has dewdrops face up, that is actually going to automatically pluck the 2 adjacent petals to that dewdrop. So you as a player will probably not want to pluck a dewdrop petal when it's face up if you yourself have a petal on the adjacent spots. But for example, if I was the green player, I might actually want to pluck this dewdrop petal here, because that will actually automatically take off one of the purple player's petals as well as one of the yellow player's petals. And I will mention that chain reactions can happen in this way. So if I do decide to pluck this one here, if there's anything on the other side of those 2 petals, those will trigger as well. So moving on to the withered petals. So that's the ones with the like brownish color on the other side. These, if they are placed both face up or face down, they will allow the player that placed that petal to place down 2 petals into the bouquet. So if you actually intentionally or unintentionally, if it is face down, pluck a withered petal, that player will then be able to place flowers into the bouquet, which is something that you probably don't want to happen. So this is definitely something that players will be able to do when it comes to the bluffing, is placing down a withered petal face down in hopes that someone will think maybe that is, you know, either a dewdrop or a bee, which we'll get into, face down. So maybe they pluck that, thinking it's one of those 2 when it's actually a withered petal, and allowing you to then be able to place more flowers out, or petals, sorry. And then like I just mentioned with the bees and the dewdrops, if a player places one of those 2 face down into the bouquet and another player actually comes along and plucks that, that player that plucks it actually gets to place a flower right out of their hand into the bouquet when that happens. So as a player, when placing down the bees and the dewdrops face down, that will allow you to ignore their placement restrictions, but it's also a little bit risky because you're risking one of the other players plucking one of those petals and then gaining something from that. And then lastly, for the petals, you do have just the plain petals with nothing on the other side. If you do place these face down and another player plucks them, nothing is going to happen for these ones. And then lastly, the third action that you can take on your turn is the draw action. Very simple. If you are running low on petal cards in your hand, you can decide to take this action on your turn and pick up to 3 petals into your hand, respecting the hand limit of 5 petals. This gameplay will continue with players either placing down petals, plucking petals or drawing cards until the center blossom has a consecutive row of 5 or more petals. Whoever placed the last petal there will then be able to place down one of the side blossoms, and then you'll place the other one on the other side. You will continue that until, depending on the player count, in a full 5-player count, it's when all petals have been placed, but in a lower player count, I think it's when one side is full. But once that happens, the player with the most petals in the discard pile gets to choose where the vase is placed, either on this side or this side, I believe. I'm not sure if you can place it like on the side here, but I would say your best option would be to place it there to have the most beautiful flower arrangement. But I will definitely let you guys know either in a little blurb here or in a pinned comment if you can place it literally anywhere. But yeah, after that is complete and all of the petals have been placed, you're going to flip over all of the face down petals, and then depending on what petals each player has placed, they will get a certain amount of victory points depending on that petal. So any of the petals that are just the normal flower petals, those are going to get the player 1 victory point. The bee petals are going to get the player 3 victory points. Any dew petals are going to get the player 4 victory points, and then any of the withered petals are going to get the player -2 points. And then additionally, the 2 petals that are locked by the side blossoms are going to get 3 additional points, and then the 2 that are locked by the vase is actually going to get their petal points multiplied by 2. So in this example here, this petal is just a normal flower petal, so that would just be 1 times 2, so that would be 2 victory points. And then this petal here is a bee petal, and that would be multiplied by 2 to give that player 6 victory points. All players would tally up their victory points from all of the petals that they have in the bouquet, and the player with the most victory points would be the winner. In case of a tie, the players do share the victory, and that is pretty much everything for this overview of Bouquet. All right, friends, so that is going to be everything for today's preview of Bouquet. Huge thank you to Rough Draft Games for sponsoring today's video. I appreciate it very, very much, and I will have the link in the description box to their Kickstarter if you guys want to go and check out Bouquet, if it sounds like a game that you think that you would enjoy. So yeah, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. I love you so, so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.